Hello and welcome to Rock and Talk with Dak, your podcast for any and all things music. Each week we're talking about something in the world of music, bands, albums, artwork, news, and reviews. Be sure to subscribe to the feed on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. You can check out Instagram for Song of the Day or head over to Twitter to give feedback or just to say hi. I'm Dak, your host. Let's dive into today's episode. I must apologize up front that this episode is a tad later than expected. There was an issue with my original recording, so I had to re-record on this lovely Monday morning. I hope you all are continuing to stay safe and healthy out there, as lots of states, actually looks like most states, are slowly opening back up from this quarantine. And speaking of the quarantine, I'm not sure about the rest of you, but the longer that this pandemic has been going on and I've been stuck inside that much longer, I've been feeling a little bit more nostalgic and sentimental. Recently I've been listening to some older stuff, and by that I mean music that I listened to in high school. But to be fair, it is hard to believe that has now been 12 years since I started high school. One band from this time that really struck a chord with me and still does, they're just a little band you may have heard of, Coldplay. While I had a really good time in high school, my freshman year, I would like to think, as with most other kids, it was a little bit rough. But I think that the impact that Coldplay's music had on me, music in general during this time, but from building character, I was finding my way, just in essence, discovering myself. That is good. And that's why I was inspired to do this episode. I want to share my story in the hopes that maybe it helps someone else. So I'm going to take you on a bit more of a personal journey today than I've done before. And, this is going to be, it's a bit of a different episode. But it comes back around to my whole idea of the freedom of music and how it impacts people in different ways. So I hope you bear with me. I talked about Coldplay ever so slightly in my first episode. I had first heard about them when my mom, she was doing those mail-in order CD things, and I remember seeing Rush of Blood to the Head. I had no idea who Coldplay was, didn't know the kind of music they did, but I loved that album cover and that's what I wanted. So Mom wound up ordering the CDs, but she didn't get that album that I wanted. And instead she got their third album, X and Y. And in that first episode I had mentioned I was disappointed. My mom did me wrong because she didn't get what I wanted, but I was happy because X and Y turned out to be a really cool album and my intro to Coldplay, and I really dig all their music. So after I got that album, got the rest of their stuff, and was looking forward to what they were doing next. Little did I know that their next effort would turn out to be Viva La Vida. And if any of you were paying attention to, I think, literally anything in the world in 2008, in the summer of that year, you know who Coldplay is, and you've heard some form of that album. Their music was heard everywhere. It was a huge success. Kind of took the world by storm. And little 14-year-old me, I was excited and happy with the music. I think it's definitely one of the cornerstones of, I guess, what I've continued to call my musical journey, because of the different styles that the band used on this album, which it was produced by Brian Eno. And for anyone who doesn't know him, he's very prolific. He's worked with U2 on several occasions. He's worked with David Byrne, and he's done a lot of his own side, like ambient music. So that definitely lends his talents lend to the sound for sure. And if you listen to other releases from around the same time, there really wasn't much else that sounded like it. For example, there was Offspring's Rise and Fall, Rage and Grace, Katy Perry's second album, One of the Boys, I think, Shinedown, huge hit with Sound of Madness, Modern Guilt from Beck, and I think B-52s in that year too. They released Funplex. They hadn't released an album in almost 2 decades by that time. But anyway, because of this time in my life, I was a sponge. I was molded and shaped by the things that I listened to and saw. And a lot of this carried into the things that I did in school, particularly in art class. Now, because this was a freshman art class, you started with the basics of fine art. This included things like doing portraits and landscapes in a variety of styles, doing something like charcoal or oil paintings. And now that I think about it, it's kind of funny to look back, or I guess think back on some of the artwork at the time that I did, and to see the influence of what I was listening to. I remember I did a art of Sting and the Police. They had just wrapped up a huge world tour, reunion tour. I drew Chris Martin, singer for Coldplay, playing the piano. And by the end of my freshman year, definitely into sophomore year, I had definitely become a lot more influenced by Rush. Anyway, because I had such a strong connection with Coldplay, this is a lot of what my initial drawings and art was about. Sadly, some of the other older students thought that it was funny and that I liked them so much, and they started to pick on me for it. Now, it started basic enough from things like, ooh, another Coldplay thing. But by the end of the semester, it could have been by the end of the year, they were saying things like, ooh, well, you must be gay if you listen to Coldplay. Well, how'd that last one turn out? The latter of which, I would later find out it was actually a quote from a movie, and I think it's something like The 40-Year-Old Virgin or Pineapple Express, one of those comedy movies that were really big back then. But I had never watched them, I didn't know that, and I wouldn't see them for some time. Regardless, it hurt to have that said to me. I felt like my character was being attacked. Now, I don't remember exactly when it happened, but it must have been towards the end of the year, and by which point I had had enough. The name-calling and picking on me had been happening throughout, the first semester, at least the whole year of high school. I don't remember exactly. Regardless. So, by the end of the year, they come off with some smart mouth thing again. So, I waited until the teacher was gone, or helping some other kid, I don't quite remember, but I had my opportunity. So I walked up to them, and keep in mind, I was 14 years old and I was feeling rather confident with this one. I walked over to them and said, "Go fuck yourself." I then went back to my desk and continued about my day. Spoiler alert, they didn't pick on me for the rest of the year. I was bullied for something that I truly loved and connected with. And did I mention that one of the older students who picked on me was a huge music fan too? That's just a little bullshit. It hurt to have someone say those things to me, especially at a time when you're finding yourself, you're exploring the world, your body's developing, your brain's developing, just you as a person, you're growing. And that kind of stuff, it messed with my head a bit. It made me question some things that I didn't really have to confront up to that point in life. And it also made me wonder if everyone else, including my own family for God's sake, would think that my music is weird. So over the next 2 years, I remember personally, I continued on my musical journey, and I started to get into some weird music, or at least what other people would consider weird. In particular, I started to get into LaRue and Daft Punk. Now, because I thought other people would find it weird, I didn't share this music. I didn't talk about it. I kept it private and locked away. So much so, I remember watching Iron Man 2, and there's a scene where Daft Punk's Robot Rock plays. I think it's when Tony and Rhodey are going at it. I was giddy. I was like, I bet my family doesn't know that I know who does that song. But by the end of 2010, I'd gone and seen Tron Legacy with my mom. Reason being, Daft Punk did the soundtrack for that movie, which is a super underrated soundtrack, by the way. So now being younger and growing up and having those things said to me, like I said, it made me question if my own family was kind of in on it and wasn't going to like the things that I listened to. But as you'll find out as you grow up, it doesn't matter and no one cares. So after talking about the movie and the music with my mom, I realized, guess what? She didn't care. She loved me either way. And now I never questioned or doubted her love. I just didn't want the different music that I listened to be a point of conversation. I didn't want it to be a thing. And again, I think that's just part of learning and growing up. So while I got out of my bullying with few effects to my overall personhood, thank goodness, I know that not all forms of bullying are so simple to walk away from. It hasn't stopped me. I continue to listen to Coldplay, and I love every bit of music they make. They're one of those bands that they seem to get all the negative attention and yet be the biggest band at the same time. I don't get it. So it didn't deter me from continuing to listen to Coldplay. Not only that, but I only grew as a person from here. I stuck to my morals, and I guess I really just let my music guide me. Coldplay, take the wheel. So if I were to have a message at all with this show, if I were to have a thing, it's, I don't know, music against bullying kind of thing. I've been very fortunate to not have experienced the worst of bullying, whether that's because I'm gay or because of the music I listen to. I haven't had to witness that. But I'm very aware that not everyone is so lucky. And, that's why I'm here. Hopefully it's to lighten up your day, and I hope that you just, when out there in the world, in essence, just treat others how you would want to be treated. Just be a decent person. There is no rhyme or reason to treat anyone. I mean, come on, especially kids. You're going to treat them crappy because of the music they listen to? That's absurd. Music has been and always will be for everyone. I'm not a huge fan of Beyonce, but I know several people where she means something to them, just like Coldplay means something to me. Even if it is music, even if that music is not your thing, that is totally okay. And that's my message that I part to you. Though it was a bit of a different episode, I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's just a little something I've been thinking about here, stuck in quarantine, and it feels good to talk about, I'm not going to lie. It's just a different take. It's my personal take on how music affects us and how we can learn and grow from it. I'm not trying to be preachy. That is not my aim with the show in the slightest. But we do live in a world where this stuff still happens, and I hope that this connects with someone, and maybe it'll help. That's all I want. I'm just here to have a good time. One last thing before we wrap up the episode related to Coldplay. I am going to do a spotlight review on their latest album, Everyday Life. I'll get into the dirty details on that episode, but I find the album came out in November. I finally got around to listening to it, and it's not what I thought it would be, which is a good thing. I know it's a lot more politically charged, but not in a negative, preachy way. So anyway, again, I'll get into the details of that one later. But I'll have that one posted up on Friday. Otherwise, I want to thank you all for joining me this week on Rock and Talk with Dak. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify so you never miss a beat. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a rating on iTunes. You can give me feedback on Twitter, or even better, just spread the word and tell a friend. It all helps. And as usual, you all coming in every week, that's what makes this possible. So thank you for the support. And be sure to tune in on Friday and next Monday. And remember, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. See you next time.